And we are live. Welcome everybody back to the Awaken Live podcast. I'm your host, Mark Smith. With me today is special guest Dan John. Looking forward to it. A couple household things, guys. We've had a little bit of change with the bear with us. We're now down to one owner operator, myself. Really excited about the future of the site. So keep coming out, guys. Check out the member portal and all the great articles we have coming up. And again, thank you for your patience. So without further ado, I welcome Dan John to the show. Dan, welcome.
Well, thank you. Good morning, afternoon.
Yep, it doesn't matter. We're all over the world here. So morning, evening, and midday for all of our listeners. But I first came across Dan through his book. I was at a seminar, and I picked up his book, Never Let Go. And I think that was about 5 or 6 years ago. I really enjoyed it, and I've been an admirer since of your work. And we have a mutual friend, Chip Conrad, who has done a lot to influence me as well. And got to talking to him, and he said you might be up for coming on the show. So here you are.
Yeah, I like that Chip guy. I like him a lot. He's a good dude, and he's a real smart guy. You know, he's got this little triangle that he has to sit, to stand, and to crawl, and he kind of pieces together the different movements from there. I thought that was brilliant. You know. Yeah.
He certainly has a very intellectual aspect to coaching, and I like anybody that brings in the whys of coaching.
Okay.
Instead of just doing something, so anybody that can give me a good why and reason behind doing something and really challenge me both physically and intellectually, I dig. And Chip's been at the forefront of that for a long time.
Good. Yeah, I agree. In fact, I do a thing with him called Mental Meatheads a couple times a year.
Tell us about that. How's that work?
Well, Dave Hall puts it together, and it's from their. They must have like a group that like one of those meet groups, and every couple of years we'll go out. We had a great time there in Nashville last year. That went really well. Just here and there. Sacramento one time, which was a lot of fun because I got a chance to go to the guy, very famous weightlifter's house called Tommy Kono, who recently just died. But it was kind of fun. Just Chip drove me over to where he lived, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Thank you. But so yeah, we gather. Chip and I have gone back to back. We have a DVD that doesn't sell well at all together. And I never will understand why. I always thought I thought we complemented each other really well. Not with an E, not an I, complemented each other,
Sure.
We kind of knitted together well. But it's funny about, you never know with things like DVDs anymore. 15 years ago, you and your buddy could get your little video and sell 1 million, but now everybody's making them, so maybe that's just, But I thought it was excellent. I like working with him because, his concept of movement is fits well with my. I'm a strength coach, barbell, kettlebell, and track and field in American football, and so I have a certain vision of how things go, a worldview, and his worldview is much more kind of free formed. The sports I compete in are. I wouldn't say there's a lot of free forming that goes on in American football and track and field, but so the two of us, I think, blend nicely. I'm a big believer that it's nice to have extremes in a workshop. It's called the barbell theory, where if you imagine a barbell, there's high on one side and high on the other, and flat in the middle. If everyone agrees with everybody, not agrees, we don't fight. But if everybody says the same basic thing for 8 hours, after about the second hour, you kind of get it. But if one guy says squatting is stupid, and I come in next and talk about the goblet squat, and then the guy after me says Bulgarian split squats are the most important thing in the world, and the guy after says it rips your hips in half, at least you'll go home thinking, And that's why I'm working with Chip is whenever I talk or listen or read something Chip's written, I tend to come away a bit smarter than I started.
Yeah, that was the exact point I made in the beginning. Is that he gets me to scratch my head a little bit, and and sort of hum and haw a little bit about what he wrote or what he said in the video. And we definitely enjoyed having him on the show. But I think you're right. I mean, it's good to have these extremes. And if you went to an 8-hour seminar and 2 hours into it, everybody's still spitting the same thing, you got people checking out mentally, and they wasted their money. You wasted your time.
Well, and I've been to those seminars. I have been to a seminar where I'm going to use the word literally with quote marks. Literally, two speakers back to back talked about the exact same thing and used many of the same cliches. I was like, my God, man, geez, at least listen to each other, you know.
Get me out of here.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that perhaps that's what has been successful with your audience. I remember when I read the book Never Let Go, I couldn't put it down. First off, great job with the book. And I look forward to reading some of your other stuff. But it was one of those, I like reading, but I'm a slow reader, so it frustrates me. Mm-hmm. So I don't do it as much as I should. I'd rather listen to somebody talk and sort of get my information through auditory processing.
Sure.
But it was definitely a book that I could not put down. And that summer, I was probably 3 years into the coaching game, and that summer I changed a lot of what I was doing around here at the studio. The goblet squats got introduced, the farmer's walks got introduced. I fell in love with this do-it-yourself $7 piece of equipment called a slosh tube. I think you know what I'm talking about, and you can get excited about that. But I just had a renewed passion for.
So Mark, I write two kinds of books. So Never Let Go and Before We Go are kind of I call them bathroom books. They're kind of, every article is about the length of a bowel movement, you know, and you can pick up anywhere you want in the book and anywhere you want. Read a chapter, jump 20 chapters, read another one. The other books I write are a little bit more systematic, but those books I also have on audio tape too, because I hear this very much now about the audio book. I'm shocked, actually. I came from a generation where audiobooks, I don't think I started on audiobooks. I think the first one I ever listened to was when I got back from the Middle East. And there was this thing called a tape. And you put this tape in a magic box and you could listen to it. I mean, that's what, 84, 85. So it is something I wish I'd had a little bit, because I agree with you. There are some books that are wonderful on audio tape. Dune, the book Dune on audio tape is stunning. Hey, the Harry Potter series on audio tape with that guy Jim Dahl. I mean, it might be better than your own reading, because you don't miss a single word or phrase, even nuance. So I agree with you.
That's actually how I went through the Harry Potter books was audio. But we live in a day and age of the podcast. A lot of people are getting their information through exactly what we're doing, having dialogue and talking about some topics and some subjects.
Sure. That's good.
So, all right. So you're known as a throwing and lifting coach. So obviously a lot of our listeners are going to know what a lifting coach does, more or less. We don't have a notion of it. But go into the throwing details a little bit. And for my own selfish pleasure, I got into Highland Games last year. I've got a bright red beard and a Scottish ancestry, so I thought it'd be exciting to pick up a heavy, awkward thing and try to throw it. And it's incredibly humbling. It threw me instead of me throwing it the first time I tried heavyweight for distance. So, but anyway, if you just share with our audience a little bit about what those two things mean to you and a little bit of your philosophy, that'd be awesome.
Well, I mean, I started throwing the discus in 1971, and I kept throwing until July 24th, 2010, when I retired. For me, it's also the way I paid for all my education. All of it was paid for by throwing the discus for. But I mean, I'm a big fan of the throws. It is funny you mentioned the Highland Games. In about 1984, 85, I wasn't doing real well physically. But there was check that. I've been 82. I saw this ad at the thing called the mall, and it was for I didn't notice, but I noticed this thing called the hammer throw. Well, I mean, I throw the Olympic hammer, so I show up and I got track and field gear. I've got my Olympic hammer. I've got my throwing shoes, and people are drinking and kilts and all this. And so on my first Highland game, I won the athlete of the day. And the only event I didn't win was like maybe the sheaf toss or something like that. But I won every event because when you go from track and field to Highland games, you have an advantage because you know how to throw. You might not know the arts. But the thing I noticed about Highland games is how much it complemented my discus throwing. And I look back now, and I really do have a mixed vision about how helpful it was. Now, on one hand, I know that specificity is king. I know that, and I probably should have just done deadlift, bench press, and throw the discus for 4 years. Those three things. But at the same time, I'd have been bored stiff. But there were some things I did learn in the Highland Games. One thing about the Highland Games is that you learn to move your feet and then counter the weight with patience. If you don't have patience in the Highland Games, like you said, Mark, the weight will throw you. So
yeah, you gotta learn to wait on it.
Yeah, and with patience, wait. So for those listening, WAIT. You've got to wait on the weight.
On the weight. Yeah.
So so those two gifts, maybe they didn't help me as a discus thrower, but they certainly help anybody I coach. The other thing I've noticed in the Highland Games too, when I first started throwing, let's say I would throw the lightweight for distance in the low 60s, and people would, just lose their minds. A few years later, everyone's in the low 60s. A few years later, I was in the low 70s, everyone in the low 70s. Well, I think I threw over 81 times, but the problem is I never trust Highland Game records because the implements are always, back when I was good, were always different. But it was just funny to watch, the marks jump up because people started doing this bizarre thing called practice. It used to be show up and compete, but now guys take it really serious to the point that, I'll be honest with you, it's now a track meet in kilts. I mean, guys will argue over the lengths of things, how much. If someone puts tar on an implement or chalk, they get in the hissy fits. And then, of course, when I first competed, if 12 men showed up, it was 12 men. If a woman decided to throw, it was 13 men. And there was no divisions, and I liked that. I liked the fact that, people would come out of the stands and compete. Now you got Super A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it's turned into the Junior Olympics where everyone gets a medal, That was mean, but it's this. I hate to call myself a codger. I'm not, but I struggle. That was my knock on Masters Athletics and track and field, is that you go to these track meets and there's more rules than competitors. I guess sometimes it's like the fun and frolic and of Highland Games is what I fell in love with, and it turned into a. Here's an odd thing, Mark. This will shock you. I compete with athletes at Highland Games who don't drink alcohol during the competition. I mean, what?
Yeah. Well, the events, or sorry, the several games that I've been to, the athletes could not drink, which I like because you don't really need to be throwing a heavy weight. But
that's my favorite part. I love it when a guy's not doing well and decides to.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. And I tell you, I've been at some big events where guys started drinking heavy.
I definitely love that. I love the camaraderie. I love that. That it seems to be an event where people are very willing to help you out, especially if you're new, give you some techniques and pointers. That seems to be where it's at now. A lot of other things I did as a young athlete that was competitive, it was like, oh, you suck. Well, we're definitely not going to help you because right now I'm beating you.
What else did you do? Mark, what else did you do?
So I grew up a cross country runner, a wrestler, and a track and field guy.
There you go.
I was a distance kid, so the 4x8, the 8, the mile, and the 2 mile. And by my senior year, although I despised and hated it, I had ended up being pretty damn good at the 800. And I hated that race, especially compared to the 2 mile. The 2 mile had, for me, it fit my build a little bit better. I was better the longer I went and could sort of plan a strategy. But because of not having as deep a distance squad in my senior year, I ended up being in the 8th because I could get points for us there on our team, and we had 2 guys that were really good at the 2 mile. So it was sort of sacrifice 3 placings in the 2 to make sure we get some points in the 8 because I could get some good points in the 8, if that made sense. I'm sure it did to you.
Yeah, it does. It was fascinating about the 800 meters, like the 100, the 200, and even the 400, is that the human body doesn't really have the appropriate adaptations. For example, it doesn't alactic end at like 8.9 seconds. So really, in the 100 meters, all the guys are changing energy systems in the last 10 meters. They're actually not. They're just, I wouldn't say coasting, but they're not doing much else. In the 800, you run through a lot of energy systems, and the body is looking like, what do you actually want? Which I find interesting because coaching the 800, it's a different animal because your body doesn't know how to adapt to what you're asking, and the best training for the 800, I hate to say it, is running the 800, and that's miserable, man.
Yeah, it's I always said it's a man's race. I always said the 400 was a man's race, and I always said the 800 was for 400-meter runners that were even crazier. But the 800, this is one of my favorite stories. You'll like this, and maybe a couple people listening will get a good laugh out of this. When I was a junior, so I wasn't quite as strong in the 800 yet. I had just gone to a new school. We built it, and I had the esteemed pleasure of running the first meet, first race, first event on the track. Obviously, the 4x8 is the first event, first running event in track and field, and I was the first leg. And we were running against 2 teams that were very good. These guys were like state level. They always made regionals in states. Our 4x8 team, a lot of us just did it as a kind of quick-paced warm-up for our mile and 2 guys at the time that I'm telling this story. And I get out there, and we come through the first lap, and I'm about, 15 meters behind these front guys, doing my best. And I hear them start calling up the splits. They're like 47. Or sorry, they're like 56, 57, 58. And I look up, and I holler out with a gasping breath. I said, "You guys know we're doing another lap, right?" I had known these guys from running around in the county with them and everything, and it was a good laugh. And I think I did on that one I think I hit it like 60 and 66 or something like that were my splits. But I was just like,
did they crash after that? Did they crash?
Oh, I was toast, man. No, they didn't. They didn't really crash. They actually looked pretty strong. They didn't have a faster second lap, but their splits were good. I think the guy the leadoff guy for the team that handed the baton off first, I think he went 57, 61, which is really respectable. That team went on to finish 3rd in states that year.
Oh, okay.
So they had a really good team, and they were all upper class runners too. So yeah, they knew that guy went on to run in college. His name was Mark as well. I remember him well. He was a good guy, but he went on to run in college. But I always thought that story was funny because you sprint a first lap and then you just hang on for dear life. And there are some other strategies to it, but if you're not out within distance,
when I was in college, we had an Olympian in the 800 meters, Mark Enger, and that was exactly his plan when he was at his best. He'd go out in 47 and then just hang on. But we personally didn't like it because everyone was always looking like they were catching up to him. But the truth is, at the time, the research said that was smarter, and I still agree with it. I still think it's the way to do an 800. And then just hold on for dear life on the second lap. If you go out in 47 and come back in 60 seconds, that's still at 147. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah, the strategy of trying to catch people in the last 2. I just think that it's too quick a first lap in general to either make that up or to really have enough left in the tank to really make it. Versus in the 2 mile, I would eat people's lunch in the last 200 meters because I was just switching to fast twitch muscles.
Sure.
But like you said earlier, it goes back to your point that the body's not really made for the 800.
Mm-mm.
I thought that was a very, very excellent statement.
Yeah.
So very cool. And then listen, man, dude, I love it. You said it was going to be simple but not easy. I think that's such a great, straightforward approach to lifting. I think a lot of times coaches today are just getting more and more complicated. It should be as simple as, like you said, pick something up, put it down, put something overhead, carry it for time.
Right. Well, and you can make a statement like that. I mean, people will look at some of my training programs. I'll notice I'll go to these forums sometimes. Someone will send me to a forum. They're discussing this program, and you'll get this little line, like with one of our Olympic lifting programs. Is this enough? And then these guys will say, well, it's not enough for me. Then you find out that they're grown men, or they're adults, and they're snatching 135 pounds or 60 kilos. Well, of course it's not enough work for you. You're so weak that you need more stuff, or you'd actually just put your nose in the grindstone and get stronger. So one of the things about any of my programs is that a lot of people, there's a couple of things in the weight room. There's volume, there's intensity, and then there's density when you're looking at programming. But the thing about intensity is we don't even know. Well, we've so changed the meaning in the last 40 years that very few people even understand what it means. And so I go to this whole thing. So when I'm talking about being simple but not easy, people miss the idea. When we're talking about maximal efforts, somebody who's, let me go through it real quick, okay? Most people, when you talk to most guys, they bench about 200. They'll say, I bench 200. Because every couple of weeks they go in the weight room and they bench press, they curl, and they lat pull down. And then they do a treadmill. So when if I had to say to them, I want you to do 90% of your best for 2, that's only 180 pounds. Now, if they train for a couple of months and they get their bench press up to 250, say, well, and I say I want you to do 90% for 2, 225 for 2 might be a harder thing. But if you're like one of Dave Tate's guys who benches 800 pounds, and I say 90% for 2, they'll laugh me in the face. I couldn't do that. So that's part of the problem we have. And the words I use are, most people have a sort of max. That's that 200-pound bench press. And then you have that kind of max, if you will, where you trained. And then you have this thing called max. That's your best lift ever. That has a story to it. You trained for 12 years for it. People applauded when you made the lift. That's, to me, as a max. So I think sometimes in our field, people look at what I write, and if they only have a few weeks or a few months experience, I don't make as much sense as going to a bodybuilding magazine, which caters to newbies all the time. With those 27 different arm exercises, all for 5 sets at 12. I don't know how they do it, man. I mean, I have no idea.
It's quite laughable. So with regards to the bench press, it's funny you mentioned that, because I wrote an article. It was very controversial. I got called all kinds of nasty names on Facebook and on the internet. It was 5 reasons to not do the bench press. Now, summation for the listeners, I did not say don't do the bench press. My point was, your average gym Joe, who our audience is basically your average, middle-aged guy who works an office job. How can we make their life better? What fitness programs can we do to help them get off their ass and get motivated and actually make a change in their life? If they're just going in and sitting on the bench for 4 sets of 4 or whatever every Monday, and through 10 years of bench press, and they never get better than 225, I said, you're kind of wasting your time. That was the point of it. It's like, that's not an impressive lift.
Yeah.
It's really not, and especially for working on it once a week for, like I said, 5, 6, 10 years. And when I worked in a gym, I saw that. I saw very few guys even come close to the 250 mark, except for like 3 guys. They competed. If you're competing in it, great. You've got an awesome bench lift. Keep doing that, because you're competing, and it's an impressive number. But this normal Joe guy, like you said, who's averaging around 200 pounds, it's exactly what you're saying. They don't understand that it's not heavy. You're not really pushing what you should be able to do, given the human body.
And the other thing too is I'd add is, Yonda famously called the pecs, biceps, hip flexors, and hamstrings the tonic muscles, which tighten as you age. So when you're doing bench press and curl, you're kind of turning yourself into an old man. But the other thing too, when I came up, the press, the overhead press, the military press, was the standard. And I'll tell you one thing: if you go back to your 1960s magazines and look at the guys who pressed a lot, they're impressive. Their physiques are what most guys in the gym want. That's why I like what Greg O'Gallagher says. He's the Kino body guy. I know a lot of people like him or hate him. It doesn't matter to me. But he emphasizes the incline bench press, which is great. In my gym, we don't have a bench. We don't have a bench. We just do overhead work because here's the thing. Here's $1 million for anyone listening. If you're working with males, never program bench press or curls. Males will do them. If you're working with females, never program abs or stretching. Females will do them. So why even waste my time? If I put bench presses in, they'll skip the squats, the cleans, the snatches, the swings, the Turkish get up to get their bench presses in. But if I make them do all that other stuff, they'll come back after and do the bench presses.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But I've lived through when the bench press became the king of the lifts. And I got caught up in it too. I mean, I think we all did.
I think everybody does. Man, it's hard when, you start lifting and the only question people care about is what's your bench. And, it took me a while to sort of say, like, wait, I'd rather you ask me what my deadlift is because I feel like it's a cooler number.
Yeah, well.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, even at Highland Games, the new guys will ask me what I bench. It's like, oh boy, you need to change your paradigm about weightlifting here a little bit,
Yeah, especially if you're throwing. But yeah, it's interesting, and for some reason that still seems to be the everyman's king, for lack of better phrasing. I think there is some change going on. I'm sort of in a much smaller. I'm in a small unconventional gym now, so I don't see it quite as much, and we don't have it here. I'd rather you pick up a rock and walk it across my yard.
Right. That's more sense to me. We do. Yeah. I'm one of the few. Like today, we did a lot of Turkish get-ups. We did a lot of we did weird carries. And I train people just like you read. And when people first come, they come to learn that kind of stuff from me, but they're actually shocked when I actually do it. Mark, how old are you?
I'm 32, sir.
I'm just a child. Okay. What year were you born then? What year is 32?
84. The same year you started throwing Highland Games. I didn't want to say anything when you said it.
84? Okay. I was studying intensive Turkish up at Portland State. Huh, that's funny. Okay. But so, in your lifetime, so I was there when in fact, I went to the premiere of Pumping Iron, and I met Arnold because I was obviously the only guy who lifted weights there. Pumping Iron was a line of sand for American weightlifting because that became the way we train. The Frankenstein body part approach, arm day, leg day, kind of thing. 5 sets of 10, which, and by the way, everything I say is just fine. But before that, weightlifters were guys who competed in weightlifting or were athletes. So in your entire life, there's been this way of training, and everyone thinks it's the right way. And this isn't moral theology. There's no right or wrong here. No one cares. But so in your whole life, if you say, I don't bench press and curl, you're a radical. You're insane. But in my lifetime, I say I don't bench and curl, and I hear 1,000 voices say, yeah, right on, who does? But so that's just something you actually have to get used to in this time. It is interesting, when you get these groups about a decade ago, triumphing, we do squats, like it's some mystery, or snatches and clean and jerks. I've been snatching and clean and jerks since 75. I've been squatting since 1965. There's nothing new. No one invented these exercises a decade ago. They've been around a long time, But the bodybuilding, the vision of training through the lens of bodybuilding has just dominated our landscape. And well, you get the same thing from the aerobics Nazis. You know, the only way to burn body fat is to, feel the burn, sweat and vomit. And the truth is, rarely does that style hold over time. We call it, it's called the fat triathlete syndrome in some places. It's called the fat aerobics instructor situation, where this person, it's also, and now it has another word, skinny fat. The person is skinny but fat. And this idea that, doing aerobics to death puts you in shape for anything. I mean, it might get you in shape for an aerobics class, but, if you've got an aerobics Nazi playing in a football game, that person's in trouble. So a lot of us never really lost the old vision of things. If you don't mind, I'll go through it real quick. There's 4 words. One is health, and health is the optimum interplay of the human organs. The next one is fitness, and that's the ability to do a task. The third is this thing called longevity, and really lots of longevity is your DNA, and you either lucked out or you didn't. But we can also have you do certain things that will maybe help you along. And the last one is performance, and performance is when someone calls your name and you step up and you do something. If they call your name, Mark, and you throw a weight for distance, that's performance. And the problem is, what we've had in the last decade is people tell me that marathoners are healthy. Well, no, but if they're cancer free and their blood tests are good, yeah, I agree with you. But doing a marathon is just a task. When I threw the discus really far, I was fit to throw the discus far. Honestly, there was times in my career I wasn't fit to walk up a flight of stairs. Back when I weighed 273, I was so strong, but I had no endurance. But it only takes me, from the moment my right foot picks up, 1.6 seconds to deliver the discus. So 1.7 seconds is cardiovascular work for me. I don't need it. So what happened? In your life, there's been 2 kind of things that have banged into each other. One, the bodybuilding worldview is right for everything. And on the other side, trying to prove health with fitness tasks. And then the new one that just showed up is doing a fitness task as performance. In other words, we're going to go to the gym today. We're going to have a race to see who can do 100 burpees the fastest. Wait, why am I performing in the gym? So now, so what you see is you see all this gym hero nonsense showing up. But to me, it's always about performance. You get on the platform, you get on the field, you get in the ring, and you perform. And so when you work with my worldview, you got to keep those things separate. Having said all that, let's get back to longevity. You might choose to do certain things that you're going to write checks in your 30s. You might not be able to cash in your 60s and 70s. I got to tell you, I'm shocked, honestly, how many of my friends I've had to bury way too young, many in their 30s. Lots of it from performance-enhancing drugs, and lots of it from just so many issues. And what's the use of that A.E. Hausman's great poem, to an athlete dying young. I have a lot of friends who'd probably been happier if they'd have died the day they got that medal, because their life hasn't been that great since. And those are things you've got to consider, man. I play with my grandkids all the time, and I work out every single day. I'm 60 years old. I work out every day. I can still lift heavy and go for long walks with my dog. And you got to weigh that into all of this. Sorry to go on that little rant, but I think it's important.
No, I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on. I consider myself maybe a little bit smarter than the average person when it comes to looking at the future. So I've made some early changes in my 20s that probably, had I kept training the way I was back then, I would just be riddled with injury and stiffness now,
Yeah.
9 years later, and I thought that a quality of lifestyle training where I, could sort of get out of bed without all the aches and pains, and I, at the time, wasn't competing anymore, so I didn't need to, go unbelievably hard for performance, like I did when I was a high school athlete, or even, in college, still doing some things. I was doing jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff in college. And so then it's like, hey, look, I kind of want to be around a long time. I want to be that guy that's got grandkids, can play with them and do all that. And my dad is a good model of that. He's 63. He still works out every day.
Good.
Has a very respectable list. Oh, he's all over. He's all over our website and the Facebook groups there. He's kind of for some people, it's like an anomaly, but for me, I just think that as long as you're around, you should still be able to do stuff that you ask of your body. You should be able to move well. You should be able to, strength based. You should be able to pick something up that weighs a fairly substantial amount. It doesn't have to be your max or anything, but if something's 100 some pounds or even 200 pounds, you should be able to pick it up and take it for a walk. And you should be able to just enjoy life. So, I think it's very cool when I meet a guy like you who's done so much with his career and everything, and you're saying this because it just reinforces those decisions I made in my mid-20s that just stop hurting all the time.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you learned it now, because I know people didn't learn the lesson, and then one day everything broke. I mean, just Joseph Campbell says he talked about like a car, an old car breaking down. First your bumper falls off, your brake lights don't work, and there is some truth to that. But it's also going to be a car and run into a tree, get fixed, run into another tree, get fixed, and run into the third or fourth time you run into a tree. It gets harder and harder for the surgical team to fix you. And I got some friends who ran into some trees, man, and it's you have to measure it whether it's worth it. I talk about this a lot. So all my education was paid for by throwing the discus, and I've had a lot of like surgeries and injuries through the year to fix wear and tear injuries and some other stuff, from being in the weight room and stuff. And I can sit here at age 60 and say, listen, it was worth it because of the discus, I saw the world. Because of the discus, my daughter's education was free. Because of the discus, my whole career is based on the fact that I threw the discus for Utah State University and did really well. So for me, the cost to benefit ratio of those surgeries, the benefits work. But if you're a gym rat who's on anabolics, just to look good naked, there's another thing. These guys who think that having zits on their shoulders is going to get a lot of women. It might. It actually might. There are women out there. Trust me, man. I watch TV. There's all kinds of people in this great white world. But like my coach told me, Dick Nottmeyer told me, he goes, if you really want to meet women, do something about your hygiene and learn how to dance. And I'm like, that. I got to tell you, it's still the best advice I've ever heard in my life.
I will vouch for the dancing. I always liked dancing. In college, I signed up for the ballroom dance club, which is just a social thing. Ended up getting on the ballroom dance team, competitive ballroom dancer in college, and I have rocked every wedding and social event since then because I can cut a rug and dance, and women love it. My wife loves it, and you're always going to be the life of the party if you can. And you know what? It's actually cool to know how to really dance.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
But if you're on anabolics to just look good for your gym group, there's a cost there. There's a cost, and I got to tell you, I got a lot of friends who are on the other side of some of this stuff, really struggling down. And listen, do whatever you want. It's a free country, by God. Look at what we elected. But my point, I guess, is that be sure you run things through a cost to benefit ratio every so often. Take some time to see, is it worth it? And that's one of the reasons we slid our workout times down so much, trying to get more and more work into less time, because I want my athletes to do well in college, and if they have a part-time job, do well there, have good relationships. And so this all coming back to the simple but easy idea. So when people look at my workouts, they always say, oh, they're so simple. Well, yeah, because we try not to waste a ton of time. You know, somebody told me that the NC2A allows, I think, 20 hours a week for strength and conditioning. And my thought was, 20 hours?
It's a part-time job.
What are you guys doing in there? And then I'll read the programs, and they have 400 prehab exercises. They got dynamic mobility. They got static. They're all over the place. They throw them. They're okay. Do you know about chasing rabbits? If you chase more than one rabbit, you go home hungry. So I believe you can only really train one quality at a time. You know, you might be able to train two, like hypertrophy and mobility. But man, even then, you can probably do that. But you know, you look at these programs, they're doing mobility, flexibility, power, hypertrophy, asymmetrical work, or symmetrical work, anti-rotation work, rotational. They got, in this 20 hours a week, they're doing cardio, they're doing high intensity sprints, they're doing, and you look at it, it's like, what's the goal for right now? And the coach will look at you and go, well, we're working on these 14 qualities. I think you're chasing 14 rabbits. Good luck getting, okay, if you're chasing 14 rabbits for dinner, good luck. You're going to be hungry. And but we live in this world now and so when you come to a guy like me who just, man, you want to get strong? Okay, let's get strong. Once you're strong, okay, good. Now that you're strong, now let's look at hypertrophy. Now that you're strong, now let's look at anti-rotation work for throwing. Now you got anti-rotation work locked down. Let's add some speed to the work. Let's add a little ballistics to the workouts. And it's not that my guys don't work out hard. They work out very hard. But we just, we only chase one or two rabbits.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I certainly have been guilty in the past before of just having just a stack of goals. And really, none of them got achieved. I've had 5-6 things I wanted to do within a 6-8 month period, and I didn't get any of them. And then I've said, you know what? I'm just going to work on this one thing for the next 3-4 months, and then I get it. And then I go on to the next one thing. And I found it that way, one, you're more focused. Two, it makes the period a lot shorter time. In order to do multiple goals at once, I have to increase the time. But then, like I said, I never really got there. So it's just simplifying and streamlining your training. I do think goals are really good. I think goals are important. I work with the general everyday person who's not performing, but it's still necessary that we have goals because goals keep you on task.
I'm freaked out. Let me just check. I can still hear you. Okay, sorry. My dog is a little angry. I work with everyday people too, and I tell you, I learn more, I think, from working with 70-year-old grandmas than I do from working with a 19 or 20-year-old person who can move flawlessly 24 hours a day, sleep for 3, and do it again the next day, party all night, wake up in the morning, work out. That's great that you can do that when you're in college, and God bless you for it, because that ain't gonna last. Something's gonna give pretty soon. That's why I like. Yeah, that's why I like working with I work with these 3 70-year-old women, and I got to tell you, those women drop the F-bomb more than any athlete I've ever worked with in my life. I'll say, we're gonna do hip thrusts, and they look at the ground, and they drop the F-bomb. I say, okay, we're gonna do we're gonna stand up and do I don't know, anything. F-bomb, 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 F-bomb. I couldn't see, by the way, what my dog was working at, so I'm sorry. So there you go.
That keeps it fun. It keeps it fun too when you got people that just sort of are themselves around you. And
yeah, well, and
sometimes
here's
go ahead.
The basic principles, Mark. I feel this way: if I could make an elite track and field athlete get better doing a thing, or I can make someone who's like in the military get a little sharper by doing a thing. So, and that same thing helps those 70-year-old women, then I can just say to myself, hey, I know that's going to work for everybody else. So if it works for an elite athlete and it works for a 70-year-old woman or whatever, then I know it's going to work in the middle. We call this thing, as we call it, the one percenters. And my friend Taylor Lewis works with two of the most famous Major League Baseball players of all time. Trust me, you know who they are. You know who they are. But he also works with people who have cystic fibrosis. And he has discovered that the same things that work well with Major League Baseball also helps the cystic fibrosis population. Cystic fibrosis is a really difficult disease to work with. It's a very aggressive lung disease, and they really struggle with simple breathing. But what he discovered was training arousal levels. Certain exercises have more arousal. So he's learned to play with arousal levels in a training session. Your arousal, like for example, on a hip flexor stretch done correctly, your arousal level isn't very high. When you're clean and jerking, your arousal level is very high. So you couldn't give someone with cystic fibrosis an Olympic lifting program and say, thank you very much, see you tomorrow. You'd have to balance it and measure it and wave it with low arousal. Well, what a gift he gave me. What a gift he gave me. And God bless the people of CF. But if it worked for Major League Baseball guys and it works for people at CF, then we can walk away and say, put this into your football program, put this into your general population, because it's right. So now I even have a way of organizing training programs based on. I don't know if I have enough time to go through all of it, but the idea is you after something really hard, you might do something a little bit technical and a little bit lower arousal, so that the people.
We've got about 10, 12 minutes if you want to cover it.
Okay. So if we're going to do something really hard, we got a workout called the humane burpee, where you do swings followed by goblet squats followed by push-ups. It lasts about anywhere between, depending on how many you do, say 3 to 5 minutes would be brutal, but 3 to 5 minutes, okay? Well, after that, everyone's huffing and puffing, and that's a really good time to go over something in like the Turkish getup, or an important point about we got a flexibility movement we're doing with the TRX. People will listen to, when they're huffing and puffing, they want to, we're gonna bring that arousal down because we're gonna practice a mobility move. Everyone's happy with it. We have a series of flexibility movements we call vents. Vents are always perfect after something that, kind of punched people in the face. So that's a real gift from working with diverse populations.
Yeah, that's interesting. Today, I got this from you as well. The litany sprints. Holy mackerel.
Litvinons, yeah.
Holy crap. So where I live is Wilmington, North Carolina. It's flat as a pancake. It's right next to the beach. So to find a hill is always a challenge, but there's one, I think our highest point above sea level is like a 55 foot above sea level, but it's a big giant sand dune, right? So
yeah,
I was using that, which has its own resistance because it's deep sand and you're running uphill in it. So 32K bail out to that place. It's about a mile hike in, and we do them there, and that's just unbelievable. It's short, sweet, to the point. You have a nice cold water, and you're done.
The thing about that family is that gear change. So, like in American football, you're hand fighting with your opponent, you toss them, and then you have to sprint, and then you have to turn yourself into a missile to make the tackle. Well, those are called gear changes. You're standing fighting, you're sprinting, you're turning yourself into an arrow. So you need to practice those gear changes, and it's oddly very good for throwers. And I don't really know why, but throwers seem to really blossom doing that exercise. Funny thing about Wilmington, North Carolina, I got stung by a jellyfish there.
No kidding.
Yeah, I know that town real well. There's a great little place about, I don't know, 100, 200 meters from the ocean that serves Red Stripe beer for $1. I just thought that place was great. It's got
Oh, was that
clam.
down at Carolina Beach?
Yeah.
Beach.
What's the name of the other one you said?
It's Carolina Beach and Wrightsville Beach.
Wrightsville.
Yeah. It was probably Loggerheads bar or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. The Catholic Church is like 100 yards north. That's like the church, the Shiprock Church or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just folks, it's just a beautiful place. It really is a great place to take for a vacation. So it is humid.
We do joke that our town is other people's vacation.
Yeah.
It is a pretty town. It's gorgeous. It's got a lot of great features. I mean, the downtown is an old historic.
Yeah.
Beautiful live oak trees. The humidity is definitely a thing here. Anybody that comes and visits me from there.
Yeah, I live in a desert. Yeah.
Yeah, where are you? You're in California, right?
No, I'm in a place called Murray, Utah. Murray,
Utah.
Now, I was in California. I'm from California, and then we moved back there. And now, when we had our daughter Kelly got married, we moved back, and just because. And then when she got pregnant, we had this great condo that we basically paid with beer money, and she showed up pregnant one day and walked out, and Tiff and I looked at each other and we said, we got to get a bigger place, man. This is so we went from a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo that, and to this monster place I live in now, just funny how it happens. The second you get grandkids, you want
place for the grandkids.
Yeah. I tell you. Emotionally, both of us just had this pang to have a place big enough for them to run wild. Just funny how
we're fortunate. We're fortunate that my parents have a nice sized yard. Actually, my studio is in the back of the yard.
Okay.
Barn that's been turned into that sweet little studio with some mats and a big ugly looking squat rack that I got from a couple kettlebells in here, and then out back it's just some atlas stones and 2 farmer's walk handles. That's about it. It's a great place for the kids to grow up, I think.
Yeah. Well, my daughters grew up around weights and NFL players and special forces guys, and so Tiffany, my wife, lifts weights, and so my daughters think it's normal to work out 3 to 5 times a week, and to worry about eating good food. So that's it's the best. Modeling that behavior is one of the nicest things you can do. One of the greatest gifts you can give your children.
Yeah, I think actually taking them here. I mean, I've been bringing them to work with me from the time they were born, and my youngest is going to turn 2 in just a couple weeks. My oldest is going to turn 4. They both successfully picked up all rock, weighing 14 and 16 pounds respectively. And then just last week, my oldest lifted over his body weight for the first time. I had 2 8-kilogram kettlebells and attempted a farmer's walk, took a couple steps and fell backwards, but he got him lifted and locked out. And I don't cue him. I just, daddy's doing this, that you could, handle yourself nearby.
Sure.
And if they decide to do it, they decide to do it. But it's great because kids will mimic. Unbelievable. I mean, it's I don't have to cue anything. The hinge is back. It's here to go. Let's pick this up. Whereas I get an adult that's been sitting in a desk for 8 hours a day for 15 years. It takes me, a couple weeks sometimes to get the hinge back in them. They've lost it so bad.
Well, what we call gluteal amnesia, I mean, the loss of the butt cheeks of the glutes. Oh, it's brutal.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it is. And then when you try to explain something as simple as the hinge, they think it's the legs. They think it's the quadriceps, and then it's just one of those things. You're fighting what you're fighting all those years of sitting in a chair watching, as I sit in a chair, watching television, driving the car, sitting in the office. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. That's why when I do workshops, I have so many hinge variations and stuff like that, because many of the participants who are in the fitness industry don't know how to hinge because they've never deadlifted, cleaned, snatched, did a kettlebell swing. Heck, I almost wonder if they've ever done a standing long jump. But they came from that bodybuilding machine, that Frankenstein, this machine builds this machine builds that. And that's all fine and it has its place. But but that's not what the human body is designed to do for performance. And that's hinge. Man, if all you do is hinge, you'll be a pretty good athlete and loaded carries. Farmer walks and hinges. There you go. There's your formula.
And you're a big fan of the goblet squat as well. So there's your three things there.
Who invented it?
You're covered. You're covered.
Who invented the goblet? The goblet squat.
Who invented it?
Yeah.
You got me there. I just know it's awesome, and we do it just about every day.
I did. Yep, absolutely, no question about it. I've had people say they invented it, but my article on Men's Health on it is 2003, and they didn't get into the industry until 2007. So they invented something 4 years after I wrote an article. And I am very proud of that. So it was originally called, the Grail Squad, because my middle name is Arthur, and my favorite book is The Sword and the Stone.
Are you going to go see the new one?
We'll see. Sometimes I haven't seen a good Arthur film since Excalibur, so we'll see.
I feel the same way.
Excalibur is great. In fact, when you look at Excalibur, you'll see the way you're supposed to hold the Holy Grail. And I was trying to teach a group of kids, and that's where we settled. So that's the whole story. Yeah, there's a number of things. I'm not sure anyone ever said waiter walk before me. Suitcase carry. I don't know if anyone used that phrase before me. And you can go back in the Men's Health and find them. But
because I use all that stuff.
Yeah.
All the time, and I'm not sure if I picked it up from reading your book or just that's what everybody calls it now. That's the thing. By the way, for our listeners, if you are not doing super heavy suitcase walks, you have got to try them out. They are unbelievable. As much weight as you can handle on one hand and take it for a walk, and let me know how you feel the next day.
Okay. I agree. Well, it's funny about. I just read an article on a website that is almost line for line a summary of my workshop I gave at Perform Better. So I guess that's what, I'm pleased. I'm not being that old grumpy guy. I am printed that. My point is, sometimes, especially people new in the industry, assume that these things there's this canon somewhere of holy scripture of the weight room, and they can just freely pull out of it. But almost everything that you do in the gym has a story behind it. And I can often tell you the story behind it. Often. Not always, but often, yeah.
Yeah, I've always been drawn to the old-timey strongman lifts and the history behind a lot of those, lift like the Anderson squats. It's got this cool. Say what?
Have you ever read John Jesse's book, The Encyclopedia of Wrestling Conditioning?
I'll definitely pick that one up.
On Bill Hinburn's site, real good price. John Jesse, Jessee, I think it's 2 E's. Book is brilliant, and when you go through it, you'll realize that there's nothing new under the sun at all. There's Turkish get-ups in there, there's swings, there's kettlebell snatches, there's sandbag training, there's ligament training, which was supposed to be invented 2 years ago. Any kind of circuit training, every kind of circuit training you could possibly imagine is in the book. And I also have the German books from about the same time on circuit training. And it's funny because you read that stuff and go, man, there is nothing new under the sun. Nothing. In fact, on Monday, I'm getting a very rare copy of a book on isometric strength training. It was a very small, about a guy named Bill March self-published it in the 60s. great American weightlifter, and I was finally able to run a copy down. But when I go through a book like Bill March's book, I'll look at it and go, there's just nothing new under the sun in our world. The body has just not changed that much in the last 100 years. I'll tell you, the only person who's really done something revolutionary in my career that made me go, holy cow, did I miss things, is a guy named Art DeVaney. And he wrote a thing called Evolutionary Fitness back in, I think, 96 or 97. He put it on a thing called a website, his personal website at the university he's at. And from there came the whole paleo movement, the whole primal movement. Anybody who says any of that stuff, he came up with this idea of skipping meals. And of course we call it intermittent fasting now. And he's the one who said don't eat grains, and it's become a major. I mean, that's, gosh, great. I mean, you feel like in my world, if I gave my child a sandwich, I'd be beaten to death by the second. So yeah, he's the only, at least he used his economics background and his child and wife's diabetes problems to come into this new view of things. And I found him so of all the people I've read in my life, there's others. I mean, certainly there's others, but he's the one in my experience that made me really, flip things around in my head. If you know Mark's Daily Apple, Mark Sisson,
yeah,
I have great respect.
Yeah, we had Elle Russ on the show a few weeks ago, and she's his sort of his right hand woman at this point.
But I would say,
it was an awesome show. But yeah, dude, it's so funny. I think intermittent fasting comes up on this show, this podcast. So,
yeah. Well, you know who came up with it? Do you know?
The concept was it Ori?
No, God, no. Outside of every world religion having a fasting period, have you ever heard of the Hippocratic Oath? Hippocrates in 476 said that obese people and those wishing to lose weight should do exercise, and while still eating, eat one meal a day. Sorry, while still sweating, eat one meal a day. Yeah, I tell people this all the time. If you think
Hippocrates.
If you think you invented intermittent fasting, you're only about 2,400, 2,500 years late.
Yeah.
But other than that, yes, I invented it. I always joke about that. Yeah, I invented fasting. Jesus and I were in the desert that one time, and Jesus said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Try this idea. Don't eat for 40 days." And then, come on. I mean,
yeah, I agree. There's nothing new under the sun, and all it is just maybe a old idea, or not even a spin on it, just spitting it back out. But
I've got great respect for Brad Pillon. Is it Pilon? Eat, Stop, Eat. I really like his information because he also takes it into the world of anti-inflammatory stuff, which I think is really an interesting idea.
Well, that stuff's huge. That's real important.
Oh, yeah.
I know a lot of people that they just ache and pain every day. It's not an inflammation issue. It's something you could clean up instead of popping some Advils.
I was stunned in my own life when I finally figured out that some of my problems were, I'm Irish, so I got that reddish glow anyway, but how much of it was food-based. And I'm not saying, now there's a huge difference now between starvation and fasting. There's a huge difference between allergic and maybe this food doesn't agree with me. Once I got rid of I don't think this food agrees with me stuff, I really made some big progress. That really helped me a ton.
Yeah, definitely. It's cool when you let the body do a new way of eating that's vastly superior than what is commonly the way we eat in the West. And all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm sharper. I am sleeping better. I have more energy, caffeine, and I feel better. And And then look at my performance. My lifts are going up faster. It's silly, but it's, we do all these things and there's all these supplements out there, but it's really like, it's just proper nutrition. Eat good proteins, eat good fats. Don't eat a lot of crap. What happens?
Yeah,
like you said,
well,
simple but not easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at Mark's 21-day challenge, Mark Sisson's 21-day challenge, and there's not one thing insane there. It's I always tell people, look at people don't understand the Atkins diet. Atkins never said meat only. He never said that. What he said was people's diets are so unbalanced with cheap carbohydrates, the sugars, the starches, as my mom used to say, that going 2 weeks on the other extreme would cause you to at least wake up a little bit. And people miss that. Of course, people never read anything. I always feel like I have some bizarre gift, like, oh, I actually can read, So people will quote Atkins who've never, they never read it. They read a website about, or they were at a bar one day and someone said something. That's what they know. Oh God, the worst part of my life is going to parties and having people who don't know anything about weightlifting preach to me about weightlifting, and it happens all the time. Well, listen, my friend, I've got to meet. Mark, I have to meet with my athletes, my throwers here really soon, and I'm gonna be pressed for time if we go much longer. Okay, is that all right?
No, this is fine. We're just over the other thing. I was just gonna tag on to what you said, that it kind of comes with the territory when you've got the label as a coach. People want to throw in their 2 cents, and sometimes I just want to be social and hang out. I don't want you to tell me what it is. And I've had guys where I actually talked to them for a while. Thought I said some pretty profound would lead to a paradigm shift, and next thing you know, they're on the pec deck and the tricep push down the next week after. Thanks for the hour talk. I could have been talking to other people, but it's a bit of a nuisance sometimes. But anyway, I know you're pressed for time, and we're actually over our time, but that was fun. I love a good conversation. Real quick, go ahead and tell everybody, our listeners, where they can find you, your website, if you're on Facebook, anything, books or anything like that, or if you have any workshops coming up, we'd love to plug themselves just a little bit. And then we'll wrap up and stay on line real quick right afterwards.
Well, listen, danjohn.net has thousands of pages of free information. When I say pages, printed off, literally reams of information. You can find my books at On Target Publishing or this place called Amazon, who isn't the best thing in the world. For my workshops, you can go to dragondoor.com to see what I'm doing, kettlebell workshops. Most of my workshops are closed to the public. Sorry, but most are. In fact, to the point that sometimes I'm not allowed to tell my wife where I'm going. So I'm not real good at keeping people current. Most of my open workshops now are in Europe. I go to Europe about twice a month. For whatever reason,
oh, cool.
My wife calls me David Hasselhoff. I'm huge in Germany, which is, if you don't get the joke, you don't know your Baywatch.
It is funny.
Listen, I've got to roll, and thank you very much for your time today. It was good to find out that Firefox will not support this Google Hangout, so that's interesting.
Good to learn.
And I'm glad I was able to fix it without losing my mind. Okay?
Dan, thank you for your time and your patience, and I look forward to talking again soon.